Hi, I'm Chuck Braverman. This is another episode of Westdoc Online. We want to remind you that we are brought to you in part by Realscreen. Realscreen Summit is having their event in Miami, February 3rd to 5th. If you go to our website at westdoc.net, scroll down to the bottom, there's the Realscreen icon there. Just click on it. It'll give you all the information to register. It's for everybody, buyers and sellers, and wannabes and superstars that are in the reality, documentary, non-scripted business. You definitely should be there if you're watching this. Today our guest is Roney. Of course, of Roco Films, which is an extremely unique company in that it's a distributor, an international sales agent, a production entity, and it distributes also to educational films. So, hi, Annie. How are you?
I'm good, Chuck. Thanks for that intro.
I always ask, where in the world are you speaking from? I mean, what location?
So I'm in my home right now in Marin County, California. Our offices are in Sausalito, where we, post-COVID, we're probably all in the office 3 days a week at minimum, but doing this interview from home.
I love Marin. I haven't been there now in years, but I used to go up to San Francisco quite often and would always go over to Marin. And as a matter of fact, at one point, my younger brother went to the College of Marin.
Oh.
Where I went up there, and he speaks highly of it before he went to Carnegie Tech. So
yeah, we just having a conversation about that last night while I was in San Francisco about how College of Marin apparently is like considered the best community college in the country.
But let's talk about you and Roco and for-profit and non-profit. What are you doing?
What am I doing? Wow, where do I start? Well, I am 24 years into running Roco Films, which is a for-profit sales and distribution company for documentaries that we, my team and I, decide we just have to get behind and do what we can. So that company, as you said, it does a lot of things. We work as a global sales agent. So, when I started, it was definitely in the just outside of America world of sales, but that's definitely changed in the last 10 years. So we generally like to take on a film for global sales because rights are much more complicated than they used to be, and sometimes deals involve the whole world. So we work with a select number of films and finding the right home for them in the U.S., and when that home does not require the rest of the world, then we sell territory by territory to the rest of the world. We also have a TVOD division where we are direct content providers, aggregators for Apple, Amazon, Google Play, and also we're considered direct content providers for Netflix. That certainly doesn't mean we can put anything we want up on Netflix, but we do have a long-standing agreement with them, and we, we're invited to pitch regularly our films. So that's it on the sort of digital side. Then, as you mentioned, we have an educational distribution division, which I'm really proud of. It does such good work in getting the films we love to classrooms, organizations, college campus screenings, corporate boardrooms, anywhere a film would be screened for educational use. So it does not need to be a school for us to do that work. And we see such meaningful impact in that space, and also can provide meaningful revenues back to film teams. So it's a division I'm really proud of. Born out of that, we also have an impact division that literally sits next to the educational division. When there's funding, sometimes funders are interested in making sure their films get in front of the right audiences, whether that be students or certain kinds of industries, that it's very important that these films are screened. Our impact division can locate, entice, and set up screenings at no cost to the end user through our impact division. So that's also just incredibly meaningful work that division does. So that covers it for Roco Films, the for-profit world that I've always lived in with documentaries. Should we talk about in real life movies, Chuck?
Yes, and I want to come back to Roco and dig a little deeper into some of what you just mentioned. But
yeah,
what the heck is real life movies? I thought movies were not real life.
Yeah. Well, it's in real life movies, or otherwise known as IRL Movie Club. It's irlmovieclub.org. I, with the help of my colleagues at Roco, helped to launch this nonprofit basically at the end of the summer as a moment where we saw the intersection of our industry, as we all know, tanking in terms of documentaries being acquired for commercial streamers and broadcasters. We know that it's been in steady decline really since COVID, where there's just been a real clear directive for most of these companies who used to buy documentaries for strictly entertainment kind of documentaries. So that's why we see a lot of biopics and true crime and not a lot of environmental or social justice stories. And that concerns us. We also are at a place in history right now where we're concerned about our own democracy. So with that said, about 18 months ago, we first screened this film, Join or Die, Why You Should Join a Club. And it's a film about the work of Robert Putnam, the author of Bowling Alone. And the film posits that when people are no longer connecting in community, whether that be church groups, book clubs, sewing clubs, union meetings, when that starts to unravel, democracy unravels. So here we are concerned about our own democracy. We're concerned about our own industry. We have this film that taught us that, we all have to do something to participate. And, civic engagement is critical. So we're all asking ourselves in this time, what can we do? Well, we at Roco thought, we can do this. We can, we've forged relationships with the Art House Convergence, people who, sit at the center of our nation's art house theaters that are incredible places of community already. They've already been doing the good work of fostering local community. And we know that there's a desire for people to connect in real life. So not alone in front of your screen at home, but together, which is why we decided to form the In Real Life Movie Club as a nonprofit where, frankly, it's been just delightful. We've had our first film, which was Join or Die, Why You Should Join a Club, came out on September 15th, the International Day of Democracy, and we had 23 cities, art house theaters, who participated. And our biggest hope was that, it's both our biggest aspiration and my biggest fear. What we wanted to have happen is for people to connect to each other. So we would provide the film practically free of charge, make sure there was a grant for every theater to do this, so they didn't have to be concerned about butts and seats. They'd leave that to us. Filmmakers would get a stipend for participating. and we would be able to create a conversation between people in the audience. So instead of having a Q&A after the film, I think people are tired of being talked at, and we really wanted to encourage talking to each other. So both at the beginning of the film and at the end, there was a prompt to literally turn around and talk to each other after the film. And I was concerned that, would this really happen? Would it be awkward for people? Do they want to talk to strangers? And in the theater I was in, and in reports from people that I know were in theaters in other cities, it was magical. It was absolutely magical. People who came in as strangers left with conversation, with feeling connected, wondering what the next film was going to be. And one theater where I had friends reported people who hadn't met before going out for dinner afterwards. So our hope is just, here's what we can do for democracy. We know that there are phenomenal documentary films that are in the public interest, that are not of interest to the commercial streamers. Generally speaking, the Join or Die will be on Netflix because we happen to sell it to them. But there's so many good documentaries that aren't being picked up. And what can we do that's not only good for the genre, but also good for our country? So hence the In Real Life Movie Club, which is a nonprofit. And while everyone at Roco helped create it, it is a separate entity from Roco and has its own board of directors.
Is there any traditional Q&A after everybody turns around and talks to each other? Is the filmmaker generally there? Or so you go see the film and then you talk to the person next to you or behind you or in front of you or something like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's it.
I mean, it's interesting because the film does make some very good points about how we all used to belong to the bowling league together and how bowling is up, but bowling leagues are down. Let's take a look at a clip from the film.
This is Bob. Bob's a big fan of clubs.
I belong to everything.
That's my high school bowling team. I'm the tall one in the middle.
And this is a film about why you should join one and how Bob discovered that the fate of America depends on it.
Harvard professor and award-winning writer Robert Putnam.
You've been described as the poet laureate of civil society.
Robert D. Putnam, for deepening our understanding of community in America.
He made people pay attention to a concept that most people had never paid attention to.
Social capital. Social capital. Social capital. Social networks have value.
I'd like to call on Professor Robert Putnam, who gave us the concept of social capital.
The number of people who know one another's first name, the number of people who take part in community organizations, the level of trust and reciprocity in the community.
The places that have better government are the places that have a long history of social networks and social capital.
Your chances of dying over the next year are cut in half by joining one group.
And so a year from now or 5 years from now, what would your goal be in terms of the In Real Life Movie Club?
Well, our original commitment is to do a film every quarter. I think that 5 years from now, I hope we're doing a film every month, if not every week. That will take some time to grow both the club base, but also for every film we're taking out, we are fundraising. So we are looking to donors to support that this happens, and it happens without regard to profit.
The films that you have listed as of now are all what would you call them? Social awareness type films. I mean, you're not going to be running La La Land, right? I mean, you're going to be running films that have to do with, they're going to be documentaries about what's going on around us, I assume. Is that right or no?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say they're films in the public interest, which doesn't mean they can't be lighthearted or about, just subjects that everyone already feels warm and fuzzy about. But they will be, the films in the future are be highly curated, and likely they'll be the kind of film that our community loves, that just aren't getting this kind of help to get to the audiences who want to see them.
So ironically, it seems like there are more documentaries than ever right now available to the public. And what they don't know is that they're, beside the documentaries, quote unquote, that are available to them on Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and HBO, for every one documentary they're seeing, there's a dozen more that they're not seeing, which are not getting the proper distribution, and they're drifting into, I don't know, what should you call that world of four-walling and hoping that a movie catches theatrically so that you can then get a pickup. So then they go to you or some other company that gets them on Amazon Prime and Google Play and other streamers, right? And they hope that people will view them like people used to buy DVDs, right? I don't want to drift too far off from the Real Movie Club, but it's very related because you're, in a way, sort of picking up some of those films that would have been on Netflix. Although here's double irony that your first film is going to be on Netflix. When do I dare ask? When is it going to be on?
You should ask, and we're almost into October, I believe. It's in October or 1st of November. I'd have to double check, but it's imminent.
How many screenings of the In Real Life Movie Club have you had?
So
how many locations?
We've only done our first one, and that was on September 15th with Join or Die, and there were 23 theaters that participated.
And how did they do that? Did you distribute digitally, or DCP, or how did you get them?
Yeah, some of them required a DCP, and some of them were just the digital file was sufficient. So that's one of the challenges of this club, and the things we'll learn as we go forward is that we are working with independent art house theaters. They all have their own way of doing things, so it's always going to be a little bit bumpy and not entirely formulaic, but that's what this is. It's like grassroots, organizing. Really, it's not easy. It's not uniform, but I have to say it's quite rewarding. The screening that I was in, and I've been in, thousands of screenings as we all have over my career, there was something different about it. And I think it was because we invited people to participate in something, not just watch something.
Just as a note of encouragement, today in the New York Times reports that CNN is reactivating their documentary division.
Fantastic.
Yes. I mean, it's a little teeny bit of good news in a world of, how did you say it? The industry is tanking. Do you want to talk a bit about that, please, about what has happened? I'm seeing myself, doing Westdoc, dozens of really good films that aren't getting picked up, and going into this, I don't know, lack of a better word, faux theatrical distribution, right? And you know what I'm talking about exactly, because you distribute some of these films yourself. I've done a couple of Westdoc shows on films that you have the foreign distribution for, and have not gotten picked up here.
Mm-hmm. What's happened? Well, I mean, I think what's happened is the entire business model changed, right? For for most of, and then there's been all the, conglomeration as well. But look, in this streaming environment, subscription streaming environment, You don't need a documentary to be successful. If anything, it's going to possibly weigh you down. It might cause you problems. It might be seen as political. It might get you in trouble with, your Saudi Arabia deal that you've made. It's just more fraught, and frankly, they don't need us. They don't need us to be a successful business. So they are being very careful. And I've heard from, I won't name where these buyers are from, but I have heard statements like, Annie, we are not a mission-driven company. I have heard, talk to us after the election. There's no incentive to take a risk on a documentary that might challenge viewers, right? They exist to pacify viewers, to entertain, and really, to bring them sort of the big hits that keep people paying their $15 a month or whatever it is. And it's just true across the board. The PBS has always been our friend and continues to be. Rock solid opportunities for films with real audience engagement. But they only have so many slots, so it's very competitive. And of course, they're worried about what might happen after the election. So it's a fraught time for these films, and we have to find other ways. And I do take some issue with your statement that some of them are going into this faux distribution. And I know what you mean, because they don't feel like they're scaling, and they aren't. But I can't discount what these kinds of films mean, even in a small group screening. And I know that from our educational division. We have a film, for example, that we've been working with for almost 4 years in Impact, and there's been enough funding for Impact, where there's been close to 5,000 screenings of the film. Now, they weren't in theaters, they weren't on a streamer, but they are happening in places and spaces that are reaching people in a profound way. In a way that's more than just, this is content. This is entertainment content. So much more, and so much more rich.
If people want to see the films that Roco distributes, where would they go? Beside your website or someplace else?
Our website, rocofilms.com. And actually, we've built a really helpful user interface to kind of help you self-identify who you are and what you're looking for, so that we can get you the right license or the right conversation to make it happen.
What were you doing before Roco?
For 9 years prior to that, I worked for a company called CS Associates. It was founded by a man named Charles Shorhoff. Charles formed CS Associates after heading the foreign division for WGBH and did all the foreign co-productions and foreign sales, then started CS Associates. I started working for them in 1991, and we distributed all of Ken Burns' films, all of Nova, all of Frontline, lots of independent films from Sundance and other festivals. And for 9 years, I headed the international sales.
Oh, so that was a pretty good education, I guess, to start Roco. That's great. I had no idea. That's why I asked.
Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Getting back to the documentary world for a second, and a film, a documentary that makes the rounds, that's a feature documentary that's of high quality and makes the rounds at Amazon and Netflix and HBO and Hulu, and does not get picked up, and then goes into theatrical distribution. What's the potential income from once they get on the streamers in a pay-as-you-go way, is there any way for any of them to make back that budget of, let's just call it $500,000, because some are way more and some are somewhat less. Can they make that back in theatrical in your guesstimate of this?
No, I don't think so.
Well, I'm sorry, I should have said in streaming, in the pay. The pay-as-you-go
transactional video on demand.
Yes.
No, they can't. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but we see the numbers. When there is a situation I can think of one comes to mind where there happens to be a lot of grants and funding and support behind the marketing and advertising of that TVOD availability, then yes, but then if you subtract all you've spent on marketing and advertising for that transactional video on demand window, no one's making their money back.
I'm thinking of one in particular film that you represent. I guess we should let it be nameless, although we could talk about it if you want. That, in my opinion, as films go, was a 10+ wonderful, entertaining, educational film that you represent and that I did a Westdoc episode on. You know which film I'm talking about?
No, do tell.
Holy Frit.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember what the budget was on that film, but let's just make up a number and say it was $500,000 all in, right? And so they didn't get picked up. They didn't get picked up by any of the streamers. And I know you represented the film and pitched it to Netflix, and I'm sure everybody else, and it did not get picked up. It was a fabulous film, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Justin Monroe made a great film. Tim Curry is a great character, all on his own. Mm-hmm. So what happens to the film? Are they, and if it cost in that neighborhood, and I can't remember what it cost, is there any hope
for
financially?
Everyone else? I mean, a lot of it is just timing, Chuck. That film was recognized as being really entertaining by most of those companies you just mentioned. In one case, though, it's so entertaining, it's so good, we loved it, but it's just too niche.
That I don't buy that.
I know,
excuse.
it doesn't make any sense.
I mean, what was the sushi film a couple of years ago that was Oscar? I mean, 90% of the country doesn't even have access to sushi, let alone know what it is. Probably, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, it's not. I think what they mean by too niche is. What they mean by too niche is, if people find it, they'll like it, but it's not inherently. It doesn't market itself, right?
Did you make any sales overseas of that film?
We have, and you're catching me off guard. I could come back to you with what they've been. I will tell you what I think is a very solid, somewhat exciting alternate form of distribution, which Holy Frit is enjoying, is airline sales.
Really?
And revenue is just going up on those.
Really? Like, for instance, can you give me a roundabout number for a typical documentary film airline sale?
It depends how many airlines it gets placed into. So, it all...
range?
What's that?
A range?
As little as $10,000 to... We had a film that completely surprised us. That's closer to $70,000 right now.
Through several airlines or from one airline?
No, from lots of airlines.
And do you make those sales, or is there a company that specializes in selling to airlines? We
work with we sub-distribute those. We work with a broker.
Here's a really good, unfair question.
Okay.
What's the future of high-quality documentary features?
I'm actually optimistic because I'm going to go back to the timing question. I have been around long enough. I have been around long enough to hear over many decades, oh, we're in the golden age of documentaries. And, I was hearing that 10 years ago, and I thought, oh, that's funny. I heard that, back when I was selling Ken Burns films. So I think the industry keeps changing, and I think around the corner we could be back. I mean, look, you just announced that CNN Films is back on. And I have been in situations where a film has been turned down, and I go back when there's some kind of current events related something that makes them reconsider, and then we get to a yes. It happens. I think it will happen again. I think they will still need us. But for that independent filmmaker, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's very risky. But I think even, younger audiences, they're finding a way to get what they want to see. And they're less and less intrigued by what's being curated for them. So I don't know. I'm optimistic. I think right now is brutal. And that maybe it changes after the election, maybe, I don't know. But having been in the world of documentaries that are current affairs related, it's always changing.
Well, thank you so much for being a guest on Westdoc. It was really great speaking with you, and I hope we see each other in person sometime soon.
Yeah, thank you, Chuck. Thanks for the interest.